We good? All right, we're back from the break. We are on item number 9 on, item number 8 on the agenda. This is the fiscal year 2019 proposed budget, and our city manager, Steve Thacker, is going to discuss that.
Thank you, Mayor. You have in front of you tonight in the notebook and also online attached to Novus my proposed budget for this next fiscal year that begins July 1st. We went ahead and prepared the hard copy for each of you. George, I know you're an electronic guy. If you don't want yours, we'll divide it up among our department heads.
I might start scribbling on this one, so.
Oh, okay, all right. So we just went ahead and copied it for all of you, even though we didn't hear from all of you in response to Mackenzie's question. State law requires that I give this to you by tonight, so I barely made the deadline.
Still feels warm off the printer.
And you have the option then of either adopting it tonight as the tentative budget or waiting till next time if you'd like. Regardless of which way you go, it doesn't alter your ability to revise or amend this budget before you adopt it in final form. But if for some reason you want to have some time to look at it before you adopt it as a tentative budget and initiate the public review process, that's fine. I understand that. But I would suggest you do that no later than the 15th, because we then need to prepare the budget newsletter to go in the utility bill at the end of May. And I would like it to reflect anything specific or particular you want to be included in that, other than the highlights that I normally put in, the summary information.
So when I was going over the agenda, sorry, Steve.
Okay.
Come back. I did say we do have a budget work session set on this next week. But as Steve pointed out to me, this is a tentative budget. It doesn't change our ability to, in that work session, change things, right?
Right. So, you know, it's just whether it's important to you that you get your fingerprints on it before you adopt it as a tentative budget or some version of it as a tentative budget. So the work session next week is from 5 to 7. We have to end by 7 because and we'll be down in the training room, by the way, because right here they'll be setting up for the museum activity at 7 o'clock. That will be our police chief speaking about the history of law enforcement in Centerville. And then on the 15th, you agreed to meet again in a budget work session prior to the regular meeting. I believe you're going to need the whole 2 hours, so I'm assuming you're going to start at 5 that night as well. And then you'll decide whether you want yet another budget work session at a later date. And while we're on work sessions, let me remind you that on the 22nd of May is the combined work session with the Planning Commission to discuss their proposed goals. In regards to what I've put in front of you then as the proposed budget, I'll just make a few points from the overview section of my budget message. In the budget message, I have taken considerable effort to try and give you a good feel for the significant things to understand about this proposed budget: transportation funding, parks funding, personnel, the city's debt, Utopia situation, our obligation there, equipment requests versus my recommendations, all those things. Last year, you might remember that in my message I said we faced a structural imbalance in the general fund. Needs that were not being met because we just didn't have sufficient revenue stream. And you subsequently went through a public process to raise the property tax rate. And that was estimated that it was going to generate $400,000 more. And it looks like at this point we're estimating it's actually going to result in about $500,000 more. which is good news from our perspective anyway, is trying to balance a budget.
And is that, if I follow up on comments from the last couple of meetings or and the RDA work meetings?
Yeah, there's a trade-off there that you're thinking of, right?
There's a trade-off.
That's
And
some of
so
it, I think.
The 400 to 500 is because there's been in effect, a disproportionate increase in residential property values,
That-
which means we got more residential property tax, and at the same point in time, a reduction of commercial taxes.
Yes, the reduction in the RDA's tax increment, though, was the net, that's the sum of the impact from all the taxing entities, whereas the increase in the property tax to the city is just related to the city's property tax rate. So only a portion of that 100,000, and I would say a minor portion of it, is probably attributable to that factor. Another factor, Jake, you're welcome to chime in if you'd like, but another factor I think was the in lieu, the motor vehicle in lieu is greater than we had estimated it would be. Vehicle registration, which is considered part of the property tax. That's another factor. What else might be explaining it? I'm not sure. Maybe there was some more delinquent collection than we had anticipated, but anyway, it was good news. And then we also had in the current fiscal year, the sales tax was 7% so far, and we're estimating we'll finish the year 7% more sales tax than we got last year, whereas our budget this year was based on a 4% projection. So between those two sources, that's helping us out, creating what we're going to estimate at this point in the current fiscal year. We think we're going to come perhaps close to a $300,000 surplus, somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000. That's after accounting for the $100,000 that we budgeted to increase the general fund. So I will be coming to you in the work session, one of the work sessions, and recommending what do we do with that surplus from the current year. I'll tell you right now, one of my recommendations is instead of just that $100,000 increase to general fund reserve, we double that and make it $200,000. But what do we do with the rest of the surplus? We can talk about because there are some other things that, at least in my view, we could use it for that are worthwhile, that worthy causes. But we'll talk about that in a work session. So when you start with that and you talk about next year's revenues, then that enhances next year's revenues. When you start with this year's revenues as the base and you project what will next year's be, even if it's a 3 or 4% increase in sales tax, for example, on top of this year's increase, that really helps us. So what I've got in the budget in terms of, in the general fund, in terms of big additions that aren't in this year's budget, we have a new police officer. It's the only new position that I'm recommending be funded. We have in my proposed budget a lump sum of $200,000 towards truck fleet replacement in the streets department where we have fallen behind. And I think we need to make a commitment for several years that we're going to give them at least $200,000 to address that issue. That'll also be discussed in a work session. But then we end up with a big lump sum that I've identified in this budget message to be allocated for several reasons. And that lump sum you'll see in my budget message is $369,000. And that may sound like a big sum, but it will definitely all be needed for the purposes that I've mentioned to allocate towards pay raises, health insurance cost increases, council contingency, payouts on retirement leave, upon retirement, and the annual leave cash outs, those cash out things. What else did I mention, Jake? anyway, those kind of things. I will come to you with a recommendation as to how to use that sum, but you ultimately will make those decisions. Transportation funding, we will have 1.4 million again, double the amount we were spending for these annual contracts. A couple of years ago, up until this past year, we were 700,000 on average. Now we're at 1.4 million, thanks to the new revenue sources there. So that's good news. Over a 3-year period, this current fiscal year, next year, and the following year, we will have invested about 2.5 million in parks improvements. When you include the lease from the rec district and this federal grant we're talking about tonight, we talked about, and the RAP tax and the impact fees that have been spent, all of that, about 2.5 million over a 3-year period. So some good things are being done. The water and sanitation and drainage funds, our enterprise funds, are water and drainage are back on a good solid financial basis. You do have one more rate increase in the water fund of the 3-step increase you approved 2 years ago. That occurs this year, and then I think we can just stabilize those rates for a number of years. The drainage is fine because of the increases made a couple of years ago. The sanitation will have to be adjusted in light of the recent bids for a new contract. We'll come to you with recommendations as to what those fees ought to be. But just overall, we are much better, in a much better financial position than I felt we were a year ago. So that's kind of in a nutshell. Anything you want to ask me tonight?
Well, I was just wondering how much of that is going to get excerpted into the budget message that you're sending out for the city, because I think it's important for people to know that with the property tax increase, financial instabilities have been addressed and we're on a good footing, because there's always the, well, what did that actually get other than more spending? And I think it's a good story.
Mm-hmm. So I'll be asking you on the 15th. I'll have an opportunity to give me any direction you'd like about that message. So the only question for you tonight is whether you want to adopt a tentative budget tonight or you want to wait for 2 weeks. Either way is fine with me. Whenever you adopt the tentative budget, I suggest you set the public hearing date for the first meeting in June. So what is your wish?
I would like to have more time to review it
Okay.
before adoption, so I would suggest that we put it on the agenda for the 15th and then adopt it then.
I'm okay with that either way.
I mean, it is tentative, but I'd like to make sure I have more questions written in the margin.
Okay. That Robin and Bill,
I'm fine either way.
okay. That way you'll have your full council here as well.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's part of it as well.
Okay.
And Steve, that setting the date for the public hearing, I know we're talking about the first council meeting in June. What's the deadline on that, out of curiosity?
You mean to have the public hearing?
Yeah.
You just have to have the public hearing before you adopt the final budget. I mean, theoretically, you could have it on the night you adopt the final budget, but that may have some perception issues
Yeah,
there.
that causes some serious issues.
But you could have you don't have to adopt the budget. You have until June 22nd.
No, it's June 30th now.
Is it June 30th? Did they change it?
Yeah, they changed the date.
Okay, thank you for correcting me on that then. So that means that you could have a special meeting after the 15th. If you wanted to have the hearing on the 15th and then adopt in a special meeting later in the month, you could.
No, I just was curious about the
Yeah.
timeframe, so. Okay. So I think that any further,
No, I think that's all that we need to accomplish tonight. You have it in your hands, and that gets me out of trouble with the law.
So do we need to schedule the public hearing tonight, or that can be done as well the next time?
I don't think it matters. If you want to go on a motion tonight to set the date of that, you can, or you can wait till next time, because we won't even advertise it until after the 15th. The budget newsletter will go out with the utility bills, and then we also have the requirement for a newspaper notice, I think, still, don't we? But of course, nobody sees that, but the utility bill insert will be the practical means of notifying people, as well as our website and tweets, that kind of thing.
I could see why we might want to set a public hearing tonight. I could also see, based on going through work sessions, that we might want to set another time as well too. So whatever the council wants to do on scheduling the hearing.
Now, Lisa, you're not aware of some downside to waiting, are you?
No, I didn't review the statutes again on when we had to set, if there was a deadline on that, but.
Well, it's my understanding in adopting a tentative budget, part of the motion of adopting a tentative budget is that you also set a date for a public hearing.
Okay.
Because
So
adopting
they
the
go
tentative
in.
budget officially initiates the public review and comment process.
Okay.
Okay? We'll do it next time then.
Okay, great. Number 9,
But
Mayor's.
could, wait just a second, Mayor, just privilege, please. I
Okay.
would be amiss if I did not publicly
privilege.
thank Jake for his tremendous assistance in preparing this budget. You know, as you all know, Jake's got skills with the computer that I don't have, and can work wonders with those Excel spreadsheets and ties all these numbers from one page to another. And it was just wonderful having him, he and I in the conference room and projecting on the wall from his spreadsheets, and we would say, okay, if we reduce that or change that, what is that? All these changes, what do they roll up to? And doing that successively so that we could get to a point where we felt we had a budget we could propose.
So I appreciate Jake and Steve, both of you as well too. I know that one was here a couple weeks ago, and you had the lights off in that conference room, and
Not because we were sleepy, no.
That was a dark day.
I peeked in and they said to me, "We see the screen better," you know, and then I looked up there and that's what they were focused on.
Yeah.
And today I said to Steve, I said, "You helped me out in my busy season. How can I help you out in your busy season?" He says, "Well, I just had it. It was April." So sounds like Jake and Steve's busy season was April as well too. So thanks so much.
Yeah, no, that does trigger a thought I'll mention. We do have considerable analysis still to do because we're going to be coming to you with recommendations about pay raises, the health insurance stuff, and all of that. So there's some work to be done, but I feel some of the pressure off.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, item number 9, Mayor's report. I have a couple things to report on. Steve and I met with the representatives of UTA last week, and they showed us the new flex route and improvements at 3 bus stops, and that flex route was included in your package.
We're going to show it up here too.
Okay, pull it up. That'd be great. So a flex route, you know, it's a smaller bus rather than the 30 or 40 foot bus. It's a bus that fits, you know, 10 to 12, kind of like a little bigger than a minivan, I guess. And this is the proposed flex route as you see it going through Centerville. I think where you see it go up at about 3rd South and 4th West, wasn't that suggested, Steve, by Corey and Cassie, or is that the area? Is that what they told us, or was it bringing it down to?
Well, they did. They were going to come down 4th West.
Yeah.
Beyond further before cutting over, but we suggested that you got that multifamily housing there,
Yes.
vicinity of Cedar Springs and those twin homes and et cetera, and the Bamberger Trail there, that it would make sense to have a stop along there, or a route go along there to better serve the greater density of people. And they came back and said, yeah, we agree with that. So that's why it cuts over there to Main Street.
Yes, correct. Yeah. Yep. So that's we went over that, and then we went over.
And Mayor, maybe you said this, a flex route allows a deviation of somebody to call in and say, we're not on the route, we're half a mile over this way, but the bus can deviate over there.
That's good, a really good point, yes.
Yeah, that's what makes it a flex route.
So the radius is around there represents the maximum distance from
Yeah,
the
I think that's the,
deviation?
the lighter colored area that they've drawn around it is that 3/4 mile.
So that southern area, is that the hospital?
Yeah, it
That
ends up
medical
at the
complex?
hospital down there where that little loop is, the medical center,
That's
doctor's
the
offices.
Lakeview Hospital
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
on the bottom of the map,
That's
yeah.
good.
And then the other end is over by the apartments on the west side. The idea being we're gonna give that concentration of residents over there a way not just to get into Salt Lake to work, but to get around South Davis, to shop and go to the doctors, the hospitals, those kind of things.
Exactly, so they could use it as a flex route to get to the areas in Centerville and Bountiful, like you say, shop, doctors. You use it to get up to the main bus routes, which we have two main bus routes, and I guess we have a commuter route as well too, within our city, so.
Now, the timing of this isn't right away. I think they said towards the end of this year, didn't they, Mayor?
Yeah, it's correct.
Okay.
But, so that's,
They'll have a public hearing on this, and I think they were saying August for this one. Public hearing, and then after that, implementing it.
yep. And then we went over some bus stop improvements as well too. Of course, I made sure, just I was learning that all these bus stop improvements they do with their funds. They have to work things out with obviously private property owners sometimes, and some private property owners are thrilled and some aren't. But so those are some of the bus stop improvements that you see that they're proposing as well too.
Do you want me to speak to that table right there, Mayor?
Yeah, you can. I left my notes in my office on
Okay, so
The-
blow that table up even
the
some more,
various
Jake.
improvements and how they're different.
Well, yeah, okay.
That's a size I can read.
There we go. Okay. So the first two are stops on this flex route that will be along Da Vinci Lane there between Main Street and 400 West. One in one direction, one in the other. That's what they are. And then the next one there at 611 North Main Street is one of the three that I've talked to you about before. It will be a bus shelter and bench back behind the sidewalk. No pull-out. The next one is the post office right across the street. And that will be a type 4 improvement that is shown later in these documents. It's a larger shelter because that's their most high-volume stop. And it will have a pull-out as well. Remember us talking about that is critical here because of all the conflicting left turns that are occurring. It'll be a nightmare if you have people going around the bus with all those conflicting left turns occurring. And then the next one is the third of the three that we've talked about. That's down by the Main and Center building, the new office building there on Center Street in Main. On the east side, a northbound stop will have a shelter. No pull-out, but a shelter right behind the sidewalk. So those are the three bus stops that in earlier conversations, the council agreed, all right, we will support that. And then the last two, again, are, I think those are just doing some concrete aprons out to the curb on existing bus stops.
Yes, they are.
Back to you, Mayor.
That's why they're 1B improvements.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, it's good meeting with them. And then anything else that we want?
Well, we
Came from that
confirmed
meeting,
with
you
them that they're still going to contribute to the 1250 West joint project with West Bountiful.
Yes,
$115,000 to the two cities, and then the county's putting in $115,000, and the two cities are just doing engineering.
thank you. And then the other thing is, a week ago Saturday, I spent a day in training with Waste Management District, and that was informative. One thing that came out of it, the first part of the day, was the new treatment plant in North Salt Lake for organic material, and that's Dee Hansen sits on our sewer board from our city, and he said, hey, we wanted him and Dal Wayment wanted to show that to me, and then I thought would extend the invitation to you, and I didn't check everybody's schedule. I apologize, but it sounded like there was a couple of you that would love to go see it. So a couple of us are going out tomorrow, but Dee is wonderful. If anybody else wants to go out and see that as well too. Other thing that was discussed is they're building a new transfer station up in the Layton area. This is where garbage is taken before before it goes actually to the landfill. So I think one of the most intriguing thing to me is, you know, you always hear how Europe does it right with getting rid of waste, but each country in Europe has their own little methods, and we have our methods over here, and so I guess it works for what you have available, land area and that type of thing, and so needless to say, it was a really stinky meeting. But so that's another thing. Another thing I want to report on, and I wanted to thank Robin for, there was 2 DARE graduations in the last couple of weeks, and I was at the trainings down in St. George for one of them, and another one I had a board meeting up in Logan. So how was that for you?
Those kids were so fun. It was really, really fun.
You did both of them, right?
I did both of them, and Officer Davis is amazing, and we had the chief there, and the kids loved them, and it went very, very well.
Yeah. So thank you for doing that. So do you have any specific questions for me? If not, then we'll move on from item 9.
That meeting tomorrow morning, we meet here or there at 8:45?
Yeah, Dee was going to meet us here at 8:45.
Do you know how long he was planning on touring?
I told Bill, or Councilman Ince, that I was planning on an hour.
Okay.
We can just tell him that, you know, that we're.
I may be a surprise guest. It just depends on how my schedule works
any
out.
longer because we both had to get on to other.
Now, is that after you get there an hour? Because you got transportation both ways?
But that's, yeah, we were meeting Dal out there at 9. I mean, it's just.
Oh,
just in North
so an
Salt
hour
Lake.
from 9 to 10 for the actual tour, probably?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, all right, Steve, do you have anything on the city manager's report?
Very brief, 2 items. First of all, we have extended an offer to hire a police officer. I don't know that, and that was just today that I made the final interview there, so I don't know that he's informed his employer, so I better not say the name tonight. But this will be somebody who will need to go through part of the academy, not the entire thing, but part of the academy. We're still, and we've got another candidate in hand for the other opening that hasn't quite finished the process, but the chief seems to feel pretty good about it. The other thing is regarding the upcoming gala, and I'll ask this question again next time because you got 2 missing here. Maybe I'll just get online and email the other 2. We have reserved 1 table, which is a table of 8, and you authorized up to 10, but I'm not sending payment for the 10, the extra 2. I'm just sending the payment for the 8 until I know how many will be going, because I know the mayor will not be in town. So if each of the rest of you would let me know, if not tonight, by next time, whether you're going, whether you're bringing somebody with you, then we can figure out whether we need to also get those other 2 spaces in there, which you've already approved, but we don't want to send them any more than we're going to use.
When is the gala?
The 2nd. Isn't it the second?
2nd of June.
June 2nd.
Saturday is
Second, June 2nd? Is it?
Yeah.
I don't
Second.
know. Okay.
It is, yep.
I'm planning on going with my significant other.
Okay, so 2 for you.
Two for me as well.
Okay, George? 2,
I will let you know. I need to check calendar with my wife.
okay. And I'll just do it by email between now and the next time. All right, that's it, Mayor.
Thank you. I don't see any need for a closed meeting. Anybody else?
There was that issue that I had mentioned to you, and without 2 other councilmen here, I don't know that it makes sense, but I think we ought to do it soon.
Yeah, and I've discussed it further, so, yeah. Number 12 then, since there was no closed meeting, I do have 2 appointments tonight. I'm recommending that we reappoint Nancy Smith to the Whitaker Museum and also Carol Bake to the Whitaker Museum. That will give them 7 on that committee.
What was that second name? Carol
Carol Bake?
Bake, B-A-K-E?
I don't know Carol Bay.
I'm sorry, I should have I promised that I would get you in advance, and I didn't get it out to you today, but.
We did get her resume today.
Yeah, I sent it out today. I could have get it out a little quicker though, but, yeah.
What other openings do we have right now?
Do we need to do something with the one that Lisa pointed out to you earlier?
Not yet, it's not quite up. But we do have one that's up right now. There's on the Landmark Committee. There's one, and then we have something come up on the Trails Committee. And then that was Planning Commission that was Lisa was talking about.
Yeah, I know it was.
And that's the Planning Commissioner, the chair of it, so.
So we'll have
So I
one
will call
opening
her.
on the planning commission too.
That's the chair of the Planning
It's the
Commission.
new chair.
Shaylin Hayman, and I'm going to call her up to see if she'll continue, so we won't have
But you won't have an
opening
opening, yeah.
there, yeah. So that's the 2 I'm proposing to you at this meeting.
I'd make a motion to support the mayor's 2 proposed positions.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Any further items of discussion?
We do need a brief RDA meeting.
Yeah, I was going to motion to adjourn the city council and convene the RDA meeting.
We have a motion to adjourn the city
With-
council
With the intent not to return?
Yes, thank you. Without the
to
intent.
go to the RDA without an intent. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in
Aye.
favor, aye? City council meeting's closed. We're done.
Chit chats.
RDA meeting.
We're going to
RDA
RDA
We
meeting.
just have to wait for the recording, right? Or are we good?
Oh, this is new to me. We always go to the table. Fine, let's do it here.
Awkward silence.
That's great. Okay. We're,
A separate recording for a closed meeting. Give me like 30 seconds.
we give you 30 seconds.
Or,
There's supposed to be a commercial break in the middle of this.
You ready? Okay.
All right, so we're convened for RDA meeting in Centerville City. Let's do a roll call of the RDA members, starting with Councilman McEwen.
Directors.
Sorry, directors. Yes, Director McEwen.
Present.
Meekum present.
Yent's present.
Wilkinson present. So we're missing 2 RDA members, 2 directors. So we have a quorum present. We have the approval of the minutes from April 17th, 2018. Do you have any questions on those minutes?
very brief minutes.
I would propose to accept the minutes of the April 17 RDA meeting.
The motion to accept the minutes, second.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great. Next on our agenda is the RDA fiscal year 2019 proposed budget.
All right,
And
this will be
presented by Steve
pretty brief.
Becker.
Because it's a separate governmental entity, it has its own budget, the redevelopment agency. It goes through its own process for adopting the budget, similar, though, to the process you go through for the city's budget. So I'm assuming in light of the action you made earlier tonight that you'll also adopt this as a tentative budget, or some version of this as a tentative budget next time in 2 weeks when the rest of your colleagues are here.
Does the RDA have the same deadlines?
I think so,
So it's June 30th for final adoption?
yeah.
And did you have the deadline to have it done?
Well,
That day as
I
well?
think you just process it on the same timeline as you do your regular city budget. So a hearing on the first meeting in June, we'll have an RDA meeting that night with its public hearing. Same night you have a public hearing on the council's budget.
Do we want to, so is it in here?
It is. It's at the back.
Page 70.
Yeah. It's the last page.
Sad that I know.
Pardon?
Sad that I know the page numbers.
It's just one page.
Yeah.
Okay.
And much of it should sound familiar to you because we talked about the tax increment projections, the obligations to pay tax increment, and so there should be some familiarity with part of those numbers anyway. Okay,
Okay.
there you are. I met the deadline to give that one to you as well.
So on that, it sounds like we're going to look to set a date for a public hearing at another time on that, correct?
Yeah.
And to work on that budget further.
Motion to adjourn the RDA?
No, just a second. You know, I just had a second thought, George. I don't know, we might avoid the possibility of an RDA meeting if you were willing to adopt this one as a tentative budget tonight. Might avoid an RDA meeting next time.
Don't we have to have that RDA meeting next time because of the other issue that came up in the meeting for
Oh.
the
Yeah, we
approval for
do need
From
to
the
hold it.
Community Foundation.
Community Foundation?
Yeah, that's all right. Let's wait till next time.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, George.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
I'll restate the motion to adjourn the RDA.
Motion to adjourn the RDA.
Second?
Second, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Of course, I adjourned it without doing the bylaw adjustment for the hearing yet.
I don't have that ready.